These discussions will continue in Trade Policy Committee. During the lunch, as said, we had a good informal exchange of views on our trade and investment relations with China. As said, once again, I would like to thank Mrs. Cecilia Malmström for her friendship, openness, excellent cooperation with Member States and her dedication in delivering outstanding results in the area of EU's trade agenda. I wish you all the best for the future and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Malmström, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Minister. This was the second time I said goodbye to the trade ministers. This time I think it's for real. So this was most likely my last Trade Council, and that is, of course, was very special. It's been 5 fantastic, dramatic and challenging years. And many things we discussed today have been on the agenda for many years as well. As the Minister said, we start to talk about the WTO, the upcoming ministerial conference, what is possible, realistic, achievable to achieve by then, the joint European strategy, and of course the most acute issue, the appellate body, where the European Union will continue to push the process in Geneva, but also in relations with other countries and with the US to see if it is possible to find a solution by December, and if not, pursuing our interim agreements to preserve our rights in WTO dispute and try to find a long-term solution. And we will also continue to see how we can reform, strengthen and modernise the WTO in all its form, because the crisis in WTO is, of course, much bigger than only the appellate body. As the Minister said, we discussed the EU-US trade relationship, trying to see where the areas where we can maintain a positive and balanced agenda. The good news is that the US did not announce any new tariffs on EU car and car parts on the November 13 deadline set in their investigation. So this means that both sides continue to respect the agreement done by Presidents Juncker and Trump of last July, where we said as long as we have this positive agenda, we would not impose any new tariffs. Of course, the threat is not entirely gone, and we are mindful of that. We discussed the Airbus Boeing issue. The EU we are disappointed by the US imposition of tariffs. We will have the possibility to impose Boeing tariffs next year, once authorized by the WTO, but we would prefer, and we have made this very clear to the US, to say that we should find a solution to future and existing subsidies on civil aircraft, and also see if we can find some joint global standards, because there are other countries who are massively subsidizing their industry. And on a positive note, we are on track to implement the agreement with the US on the specific share of hormone-free beef quota. We hope the European Parliament will vote yes to this next week, and the Council will then endorse it beginning of December. We have sent to the US our proposal for a text on an agreement on conformity assessment, and we are also working on some standards, and we are waiting for a response to the US on this. We are happy to note that the EU-Singapore agreement enters into force today. This is good news for EU and Singapore, but also for the whole region, because this is an important stepping stone for us, and Singapore is also an important ally when it comes, for instance, in the reforms of WTO and the modernization of the international framework. As the Minister said, we discussed EU-China relations in a broad sense. I was happy to see that my successor and friend and colleague Phil Hogan signed and agreed finally in Beijing last week on the protection of geographical indications, meaning that 100 traditional EU delicacies will be protected from imitation in China, and we will give the same protection for 100 Chinese products. This is important for many of our member countries and their economy, and we will continue discussions and negotiations in our investment negotiations with China. We are partners in some areas, but we're also competitors, so we need to deepen the EU engagement with China while defending our interests, and this is certainly a discussion that will come back during the next Commission as well. And finally, I presented, as I did yesterday, the Eurobarometer survey, where we can see that actually a majority of EU citizens, 60% think that they benefit from international trade. This is a raise with 16 percentage points from 2010. And 70% say that EU is stronger together when they negotiate trade than member states on their own. And 80% agree that we need strong international trade rules. This is a very interesting Eurobarometer. I would invite you to look at the details there. So it was a very intense and interesting and important Council today, thanking the Finnish presidency for the way you led this and the way you're leading the presidency overall. And of course, wishing you all the good things for the remaining 5 weeks or 6. Thank you very much.
Before going to questions, just to remind that we have a wide range of interpretation here, including Finnish and Swedish. So let's take first question back there. Please use micro and mention your media and your name.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Jerome Hughes for Press TV. Commissioner Malmström, can I ask you briefly, in relation to US-EU trade relations, do you have any regrets as you prepare to leave office? Maybe you could have been tougher against the US administration on this. And if you can, just a few words briefly on, in the context of trade, efforts to save the Iran nuclear deal. We know that President Trump wants to stop all trade between the EU and Iran. What's the latest in terms of efforts to try and push back against this from the EU side?
It would be tempting to sing "Non, je regrette rien," but I don't know. It's too still in the midst of negotiating and talking and reaching out to the US to have a full overview of what could we have done differently. I think the EU has, and the minister emphasised that as well, and all ministers I think today say that the US is a partner, is a friend. We regret that there are tensions there and there are some profound disagreements, but fundamentally we do have some joint interests, and from our point of view, while defending our interests, of course, we are always willing to talk and to try to find a way forward in these issues, and this is the continued approach that we will have. Could we have done some things differently? Maybe. You'll read about that in my memoirs. They will come just before Christmas, but we will.